All right, welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Wednesday, September 27, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it today. So markets here basically finished flat for the most part. S&P up 17 cents on the spiders there. Triple Q's up just under 0.25%, and the Dow was actually negative here. So that was the loser on the day. That does not tell the story, obviously. If we look on the daily here, you're going to see we tested this trend line finally. And we did get a little bit of a tail candle and a nice pivot with volume. So we've talked about the possibility of a bounce here. And that looks like that is in play right now. I do want to caution, though, and say here, I don't think this is a permanent low. I've talked about this kind of ad nauseum over the last few days here. I said this a lot this morning. Markets don't bottom on a gap up. And we had a pretty good fade throughout the day, $5 fade on the SPY throughout the day. Now, we did get a very nice epic squeeze here towards the 1 o'clock time frame into 2 o'clock. Big rally there, 422 to 427. And then we faded a little bit. Never took out the high of the day either, by the way. That's another kind of red flag. But it is a nice squeeze. And then we kind of popped towards the end of the day. I'm just saying this. Markets generally, I can't find an instance where you've put in a significant low on a gap up. Even if you made a new low throughout that day, it's almost always going to bottom on a gap down on fear. And I don't think we had anything close to fear over the last 2 days. Had a lot of people calling for a bounce, even myself included to an extent. That's not what a bottom looks like. When people stop calling for a bottom, then you can bottom. I want to see the VIX, above 20, maybe even into 22. But right now, we definitely have a short-term low in place. I think it's definitely safe to say that. 104 million shares on the SPY, doing this video at 4:30, so it's probably around 100 million by the close. We've got a nice tail, and you have a nice trend line here. Nice symmetrical trend line too, at least for the most part. You can see it there in the SPX as well, just kissed it. Remember, SPY has the dividend. But either way, what are we looking for here in the near term? Most likely, you're going to test 43.35. That's the SPX there. For the S&P, same area, 433, 434. With that trend line, if we get through that, we have the gap window, 100 MA. So that's what we're going to look for here in the short term, but I don't have this as a concrete pivot. I'm just going to say that. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But, you go back to last year, and you can do this at any time if you want, but every bottom, right? Big gap down, big gap down. Here, we gapped up, right? Here we gapped up, but this was the gap down low. We tested it and never put in, never took it out, and then you had a rally. Gap down in the doji, big gap down, right? Every other time we gap up, it's a selling opportunity. Just want to caution everybody. But you do have this trend line to work off of, but that doesn't mean you can't put in a lower high and break through it. So that's the way I have it mapped out right now. But markets here, we'll leave it at that, up 17 cents, nice tail candle, and we'll look for this area to next resistance level. By the way, Powell is speaking tomorrow at 4 p.m., so after the market close. That'll be interesting to see what he says. Yields, obviously, will be a focal point of discussion there. But yeah, right now, that's really all we need to concern ourselves with on the spot. Now, on the other hand, if somehow we take this pivot out, well, then you go down to the 200 moving average, and you have a lot of daily chart and weekly chart support there. So be aware of that. But right now, at face value, markets held up. Triple Q's up 83 cents, finished inside of yesterday's candle. Looks like we just closed above that August pivot too, so that's a sign of strength there for the Triple Q's. Decent volume. I will say Apple is not a sign of strength here. It did come off the lows by the end of the day, but that is not a pattern of strength there, and that is holding down the NASDAQ 100, as is Microsoft, although Microsoft did hang on to that 310 level. That has been a weak name lately as well. But in any case, Triple Q's, look for that 100 MA, pink trend line back test. If that can't get back above that, this is my concern with the Triple Q's, is there's just no weekly support here, really. But it's trying to hold on right now, And again, we'll respect it. And then, of course, obviously the gap fill could coincide even with that purple trend line, depending on where, how quickly we get up there. But Q's getting a bid. Russell 2000 also finally getting a bid there, up just under 1%. Remember, this is leading right now because it led to the downside, so it's going to get the biggest bounce. But nice pop there for the Russell. Still has a target of down to 165, so just be aware of that. You also have this kind of trend line here. We make a case you kissed it there. Not a good pattern there on the weekly. But again, bounce here. We'll see gap fill, maybe 180. And if you get through that, it's 182 on the IWM. Dow here, finish red. So down 61 basis points on the day. Defended that little gap window there, so that low 333.11, and a little tail candle on volume, but still finishing down on the day. So Dow still on the weaker side. Short term, we'll look at 340 and then 343 on the upside. Semiconductors. So they have not participated as much in the sell-off here, but this is still putting in a bear pattern. Down move, inside bar chop. So this could be setting up a bear base here. It could still get back above 143 and start to make a little bit of an outside move, but you still have this trend line here to contend with. And again, it's not a coincidence that trend line looks the same as the triple Qs there. So watch that. 145, 146. We'll say 147 on the upside. 20, 100 moving average. There's a lot of convergence of levels right here on the SMH, but you stay below 143, it's definitely going to get weaker and weaker. So be aware of that with the SMH. But again, that did bounce like everything else. Cloud also getting a little bit of a pop too, up $2. Nothing crazy. Holding that trend line. Again, we talked about that yesterday. We got a bid there. We'll see how that goes tomorrow. You probably gap fill, we'll say 348, 350. I don't have a lot of good daily chart levels here, but a lot of volatility there in the IGV over the last couple of weeks, and it's holding that trend line. So we'll leave it at that for now. Dow Transports got all the way down to 14.7. So again, I said 14.8, kind of downgraded it to 14.750, and we even pierced that. But getting to the 200 in a straight line, no bounces outside of that one bear flag. Maybe you could call this a little bear flag too. But no surprise, the transport's getting a bid here, up $8. Short term, we'll look for 15,250. All right, so that's where I'm going to look for the transports. If we get through that, it's 15.5 to 15.6. But transport's holding the 200 as expected. Remember, I've been talking about this level for probably a month now, right? So bull flag, breakout, that's where it's going to retest. And again, it coincides with the 200. That just makes it a better level. So nice move there. Interest rates, obviously, again, the focal point today. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Interest rates focal point today. 2 years still finishing up. Inside bar, there's nothing wrong with this pattern. Basically 5.14 is the yield right now, and that can go higher. It's really that simple. The 5-year continuing to push up. I don't have a good level for this one. I do for the 10-year. I think this can get up to 4.65, and the 30-year basically got to that psychological 4.75 area. Got 4.74, very close. I think it needs to pierce it. So maybe a little bit more upside here in the 30-year, and we'll see what Powell says tomorrow. He does want the long end up. Again, he wants these yield curves to start to normalize, which we're seeing with the 210. Could this be telling us that we're getting close to recession? It is very possible. So watch those yield curves as well. But the big problem right now, I'm going to shift focus back here to the 2-year. If this starts to break out to new highs, forget about the Fed not hiking anymore. So keep that on your radar. But yield's still holding up. They are getting a little long in the tooth, though. XHB here, all over the map today. But again, still could be considered daily chart bearish and sidebar consolidation. So if that continues to do that above that trend line, that is a sign of weakness. Right now, 78 is resistance. If you break this, 72 and then 70 is going to be good support. But XHB inside pattern there, kind of like the semiconductors. VNQ, this is my problem sector. So it did come off the lows pretty nicely, but this has been in free fall here. And, it does look like at this point it's going to test double bottom, right? So 52-week lows. Again, we all know commercial real estate is looming. I think this is trying to tell us something. I don't like the VNQ. I would avoid it. If you're really aggressive, you can try and, scalp the double bottom, but that's really all I would look to do with it right now. XLF cutting through that trend line. It did close. It did have a nice tail, but it's definitely a violation there. That's also a weekly trend line as well, so watch that. But XLF showing some weakness here. KRE also made a new low. It still has decent support here though, so I'm not expecting too much more downside here in the near term. KBE, same thing. KBWB, again, same thing. That can probably get back up to 41. Broker dealers here, little doji on the day. Let's not make too much out of it. Still has support at 480 and 475. If this bids up, we'll look at 495. I wouldn't do anything with it right now. All right, oil. This is getting interesting. Look at the power move here, up 3.7%. This is also getting top heavy. Remember, this is positively correlated with yields. And again, if yields are getting top heavy, at least on the long end, that could be the same for crude. We've been talking about this area here, 93 to 95. I think that's major resistance. Could we always overshoot? A little bit, yes, of course. But this is a major weekly breakdown area. And if you look at the monthly too, those pivots with that breakdown, it's going to be a very good point of control. Crude's overbought. It's getting extended. Yes, you did touch the 20. Fair enough on the daily, but you look at a weekly. Was it 6 weeks ago? We're at 77. We're going to be approaching 95. It's a 20-point move in not a very long period of time. So I think we're much closer to resistance than we are to support on CL. XLE, nice pop, up 2.5. I don't see any reason why this can't get a double top. But again, obviously, if crude pulls back in, it's going to weigh down on the energy sector. XOP, a little bit weaker. It is up 3%, but again, that I'd say chances for a lower high here are higher than XOE. But again, getting a nice little bid today. OIH also getting a bid. This one does not want to go down. So we talked about that 100-month moving average, and so far it's still holding up. So bears need a lower high here if you want to take that out, and you got to take this pivot out. But right now it's holding up on a monthly basis. CCJ just backing off here. Same thing with URNM. That did finish off the lows, but it did sell. Maybe a little bit of distribution coming into play here. This is parabolic now. Please don't chase it. Nat gas gapping up. So getting close to that 3 handle probably gets tested sometime in the near term. I think they defend it one more time. You got a gap there. But one hit of 3, 6 months, and now 6 weeks. So intervals of time are starting to shorten on those $3 tests. Dollar index. Again, like crude, it's kind of getting a little long in the tooth. So 11 straight weeks up into a weekly breakdown area. I think it's getting close here to some type of a pullback. No, not a 3-day pullback, but like a multi-week pullback or possibly consolidation. But dollar really strong. Obviously, that's putting pressure on the markets, and that's been the story. Gold here, that took a hit. So yesterday we talked about that. It was peaking below that wedge. We're below 1900 now. I don't know what it wants to do tomorrow. Maybe it gets defended here in the short term. Again, you got that trend line right there on the weekly. If you break that, you guys know where it's going. I've been saying it for like probably 4 months now. Like, right in this area. That's going to be the big support level there on the weekly for now. And silver also rolling over. Got to save this pivot. Otherwise, it's down to 21, which I'm rooting for. And then platinum, it's getting close. So you guys know where that is. Palladium, nothing burger again. And copper, definitely violating this trend line pretty nicely. They got to save this by the end of the week. Otherwise, there's not much support here outside of double bottom. Down to 340. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. Yeah, a little bit of a nothing burger. It's kind of did the inverse to the spiders, right? So again, testing that 50 MA and pulling back in. So kind of an inverted tail versus the spiders today. But again, it's holding up. Weekly chart, still not great. I don't love it. But again, the market is illiquid. I don't trust any of these moves. If we get to 21.5, I'd be a buyer. Again, lastly, just to recap, spiders, Good defense of that trend line. Nice squeeze. That's really all I think it is. Nice pop off the lows. If this was the bottom, I don't think we would have stopped at this high of the day. So just to let you know that, I think it's more of a bounce here. And I do have us making one more leg down. But right now, we'll respect the market. It's holding up okay. Watch this level by the end of the week. And be careful dancing around Powell tomorrow. He's going to be talking after the market's closed. So the futures are going to move whichever way. So if you're a day trader, you might want to close everything out by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Anyways, guys, gonna wrap up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. I will talk to you guys all tomorrow.